Hello everybody and welcome back to the Fortress of Solitude. Today we're going to be checking out Star Wars issues 44 to 47 by Charles Soule, Madabak Musabekov and Rachel Rosenberg. Lando Calrissian has been imprisoned by the Rebel Alliance, branded a traitor for selling Rebel secrets to Jabba the Hutt. The Rebel Alliance command gather to try and figure out just what to do with Lando, with some like Crix Madine and Admiral Akbar wanting just to blow him out of the airlock, while others like Leia and Mon Mothma would rather not resort to violence to deal with this, citing how there is always hope. They are the better people here. Soule actually has a little fun with this, since Leia becomes somewhat self-aware, citing how she always seems to say hope, or turn to hope, and what hope brings to them. And it's true, since across all Star Wars media, that's kind of Leia's MO, being the one that, relies on hope, and hope will get them through everything. And it is nice to see her being written very self-aware of the fact. I quite like that. While Madine and Akbar think that Lando is nothing but a scoundrel, Leia reminds them of Lando's heroism during Coruscant and the Kazarat convoy missions recently. But more so than anything else, Lando is pretty popular with the rebels, and they all like getting drinks with him or playing sabacc with him at the Afterburner bar. In order to deal with Lando then, Mon Mothma proposes a sealed tribunal that herself, Madine and Akbar will sit on and pass judgment on Lando, who will be allowed to defend himself within the bounds of the law. Soule actually begins planting seeds here for the future of the rebellion, as Madine doesn't see how this will actually help, but Leia knows that this case could end up being something that shows the people that the rebellion are fit to govern a new republic, since offering something as simple as basic due process and fair trials will be a popular thing, especially since the Empire took those away. Of course, we know that that's not really how things go, thanks to politics and greed. We've seen that sort of stuff over in The Mandalorian and the Ahsoka series, as well as various books like Bloodlines. Lando and Lobot meanwhile have a bit of a heart-to-heart, and Lando is told some hard truths, like how he saved Lobot only to let the Alliance do whatever they want with him after Lando is gone. I really like how Lobot frames this, and how Lando doing what he did sealed Lobot's fate as a friend of traitor Lando Calrissian, so he'll never be as seen as an equal to the rebels or accepted by them. And on top of that, he's a hybrid, and after the recent Dark Droids incident, they aren't really trusted as much either, so Lando doing what he did pretty much ruined what little life Lobot still has left to live. Thanks to the coming trial though, Lando is allowed his own counsel, so he puts in a call to an old friend. Meanwhile, while all this is going on, we get little snippets of a world called Uveron, where a group of mercenaries get ready to complete their mission, and there's a story here that we'll get to a little later on in the issue. I do just want to also point out that these mercenaries look really damn cool. Madabak Musabekov kind of draws them very similar to Griffith from Berserk when he turns into Femto. He's got like the giant Batwing capes, and their armor is all white and not black here, but it looks very heavily inspired by that, and I am all for that. Also, the world of Uveron looks very cool as well. It's all these weird spherical pods hanging between cliffs and whatnot. Very, very interesting looking world. Soon Lando's lawyer, Sally Giorgio, arrives at the fleet, brought in by Chewbacca, who of course is the one who's like her valet, carrying all her opulent luggage, because she seems like she's a very high paid lawyer, what with the gold eye patch and just the gold accessories galore. Now, first impressions of this character are, I don't really trust them. They are a lawyer after all, but the way Soule writes her just screams opportunist. And being that Soule is an ex-lawyer, someone who's dabbled in law, I wouldn't put it past him to actually draw from experiences, and maybe he's met a lawyer very much like this, very much like a Saul Goodman type of lawyer, where they're all like flash and putting on the theatrics type of thing. And there definitely are lawyers like that do exist. We've seen them throughout media, and I like to think that there's some sort of real life counterpart that Soule once found or ran into as his time as a lawyer. The trial gets underway, and right off the bat, things seem pretty unfair for Lando, as Madine wants to use the Corellian Code of Military Justice, something Sally says she's not overly familiar with and isn't allowed time to research or study for the case, thanks to Madine just wanting to get this over with. The case goes on, and the talkie is examined by Captain Musgrave, the man who's prosecuting Lando, and shown that if the talkie's rebel codes were found, they could have easily been broken by any modern droid thanks to the ancient coding used by the droid being so outdated. This evidence is all pretty damning for Lando, but none more so than when the droid recounts with recordings how he was sold to Jabba and how Lando threatened him constantly. As the mercenaries on Uveron fight their way through some security in a base, Sally takes to the stage, and I'm quite liking Star Wars being a legal drama now. You know, as I said before, Charles Soule used to be an attorney, so he has background in being able to do something like this, and it's really strange that it's taken this long for him to actually pull the trigger on something like this, but it fits so well with how they're doing Lando's character throughout this book. Of course, it would eventually end with him going to trial for his various crimes and betrayals, so of course it makes sense for Soule to be the one to write this, and we haven't really seen this sort of stuff in Star Wars before. We saw a little bit in the Clone Wars where Ahsoka was put on trial, but this is a lot more complicated than that, whereas that was, you know, for a cartoon, you know, has 20 minutes to tell a story. This is like a multi-issue, multi-week long story, and I like that we can kind of get into the meat of it all. Sally soon asks the talkie about the Jedi mind trick, positing that maybe Lando was under the influence of the Jedi mind trick, but Luke of course tells that that's not how it works, and we learn Sally is just kind of stringing things along until she can find a strategy that has the proper footing for them. She also is using the opportunity to showcase how Maydeen and the others don't actually care if Lando is guilty or not. They just don't really like him and don't want him to be around them. I have to wonder if they're ever going to bring up Maydeen being an ex-Empire general. He was an ex-Imperial general before defecting to the rebellion, and I wonder if that will actually end up playing a role here. And I could definitely see someone like Sally using that to the fact that, like, oh, Lando has killed many Imperials and gone against the Imperials and you don't seem to like him. Funny how that works. I could definitely see her doing something like that, and hopefully it does come up, because I don't think that's something that a lot of people know. Crix Maydeen was an Imperial general for a very short amount of time, but he still was working for the Empire, and now he's leading the rebellion. While Sally and Lando try and come up with a way to sort of come up this case, it's as if on cue something does actually happen, and it's a little bit convenient as we learn that those mercenaries on Uveron are actually there to kidnap Mon Mothma, who is on the planet on a rebel fund-finding mission and is kind of Zoom calling into this tribunal from there. The mercenaries take Mon as their hostage, and this gives Sally and Lando a break they need to come and formulate a plan of attack against Maydeen and the others of the Rebel Tribunal. Issue 45 sees Rebel Command in full panic mode thanks to Mon being kidnapped, since she knows everything about the Alliance, and if she isn't gotten back soon, they will all be in danger. Akbar enacts Tactical Plan 18, which sees the cruisers launched to locations only known by their captains, effectively separating the fleet again. The most pressing matter is the trial though, and how now people like Lando and his lawyer now know that Mon is missing, meaning they can use that as a bargaining chip. Like the sneaky lawyer she is though, Sally jumps on the situation and actually cites the Corellian law that states that if a magistrate is incapacitated, then the trial they are on is counted as a mistrial. Maydeen gets a little bit technical with the law since they are currently in hyperspace, meaning they can't just go out and get another magistrate from another ship to fit the bill, and with Mon's rescue underway, they will continue the trial once she is back. He's effectively just making up excuses so that Lando doesn't get off the hook. Sally and Lando are forced to continue the trial, and unlike the last issue, Issue 45 was a full-on law procedural, and I'm impressed at how much Soule is leading into it, but not surprised, being that, as I said before, he is a lawyer, or used to be a lawyer before he became a comic writer. So each part of the trial so far has had some sort of realism to it and how it all proceeds. So next up on the witness bench is Princess Leia, and she recounts her first meeting with Lando on Cloud City and his subsequent betrayal of the rebels to Darth Vader and Boba Fett in exchange for his mining operations to be left alone. I love how Leia isn't letting their adventures since Cloud City affect her decisions, and she outrightly tells the court that Lando helping them escape Cloud City was just a temporary attack of his conscience, and she doesn't believe the man has changed. Sally questions Leia on if she really knew Lando and why he turned on them, and we learn some pretty surprising details about Vader's deal with Lando, like how Vader wanted the banquet that he caught Han and the others at set up and was very specific about it, really leaning into the drama of it all, which is something I don't really expect from Vader, and it makes me feel like he was trying to put on a show to impress Luke, whom he had just learned was his son. So it's like, you know, sort of like the deadbeat dad trying to impress his son. It's very strange. The real reason Sally asked this question is because that she shows Lando's credit account to Leia, citing that the Empire took all of it and revealing that it was quite a fair bit of money, so much so that he could have easily slipped away on his own on Cloud City when the Empire showed up, but he stayed in Cloud City for the people. This is such a cool reveal. Lando stayed out of loyalty, and it proves that he's not just some coward that Maydeen and the others on the trial council framing him as. Elsewhere on Uvaron, Kes Dameron and his Pathfinders begin their search for Mon Mothma, finding a holo recording of the captured Mon along with a ransom message for 200 million credits deposited into the account of the ransom holder within a day, or Mon will be given to the Empire. Now that's more money than the Alliance could ever dream of having, let alone giving away for some ransom, and the higher-ups begin trying to figure out some sort of plan, some of which include just leaving Mon behind and starting the rebellion over in new places where she would never know to think. Lando meanwhile has a bit of an epiphany, wanting to talk with Chewbacca, who isn't actually interested in helping Lando, which is a little surprising considering their history, although Lando did get the person with Chewie's life debt captured, and Chewie takes that very personally. Lando ends up revealing to Chewie that he recognizes the voice on the other end of the hologram when he saw Mon was kidnapped, telling the Wookiee that it's a woman named Hachi, a Skarabi mercenary, and the rebels need to act now on this information, since the mercenaries are ruthless killers and they will kill Mon if they don't get what they are owed. Sally isn't too happy that Lando is willingly giving up a bargaining chip like that, but Lando doesn't care, since as he puts it, he's a rebel, not some untrustworthy rogue. This feels immensely satisfying to hear Lando actually say after all this time, since throughout Soul's run, Lando has been wrestling with the idea of who he is as a person. Is he the team player, or is he only in it for himself? And after his relationships with Holdo, Lobot coming back, and everything he's been through with Luke, Leia, and Chewie and the droids, he finally has an answer, and it's so satisfying, even more so that it took its time to get there. This wasn't something he just immediately made a choice to be after Cloud City. There was something that had to be developed in his character to get him here, and Charles Soule has done a good job of developing that. Issue 46 drops in on Mon Mothma and her captor Hachi, whom we learn isn't actually doing this because she believes in the Empire or anything. She's just doing it because it's her job to kidnap high-value targets and ransom them off. Interestingly though, Hachi uses her job not just to get large sums of money, but also talk with the rich and influential she captures, and she wants to know why Mon would throw her lavish lifestyle away to join the rebellion. Mon's reasonings are simple enough, and they build off what we saw of her role in Andor, how the path to the rebellion is different for everyone, but they all learn the same two lessons. Something pulls their veil back on the Empire and reveals what they truly are, and the other is the person decides to fight for a different reality than the one they live in, something that allows them to have some freedom. And for her, it began with a water vine peach. Chewbacca meanwhile takes the info Lando told him about Hachi and the Skarabi mercenaries to the rebel leaders, acting as this is his own information, since he knows that if they learn that Lando told them this, they'll think it's some sort of trick. The rebels believe Chewie, and the Pathfinders are tasked with checking out Skarabi safe houses across the sector, where Chewie will join them, and the Wookiee would like to bring Lando along with him. Lando is released to Maydeen for the mission as Mon recalls the story of the Watervine Peach to Hachi and how she loved them as a child, but then they all but disappeared. Later on in life, when she was a senator, she found out that a high-ranking Imperial officer also loved them and bought up all available stock, but when the farmers refused to sell them to him, he had their farms and their stock burned, since if he couldn't have them, no one could. This is a great analogy for the Empire and how it just takes people's freedoms and choice away and refuses to let anyone have it back. Soul shows the pettiness of the Empire as well, specifically the higher-ups so well in this page, and why Mon is so dedicated to defeating them. This was again something we saw greatly in Andor, and I love that they are continuing that here with Mon's story in the comics as well. While Mon and Hachi get more acquainted, Lando, Chewie, and the Pathfinders scour one of the Skarabi bases. The team are unsure if this is the current active base and cautiously investigate, but before they enter, they're attacked by a droid car. Soul uses this as an opportunity for Lando to win a couple of brownie points with some of the people who think he's a traitor, and Lando puts his life on the line in order to give Kess and his team a shot at the droid Dekar's unshielded back. Unfortunately, the heroics are for naught as Mon isn't in the empty base, and the team are forced to continue scouring the hidden hideouts as Mon actually gets under Hachi's skin in a really fun way, putting her Peach story to practice by beginning to call Hachi a different name, saying that this is what she's going to be called now because she says so, and Hachi can't do anything to stop it, basically taking the woman's identity and freedom away from her. It's so satisfying to see Mon get one over on her captor by just talking to them and telling Hachi that she can't be who she wants to be or have what she wants in life, and the fact that it actually works proves Mon's point, and the Empire can and will take everything Hachi has, even if she ends up doing deals with them. Mon ends up getting through to Hachi and is about to convince the woman to free her when Hachi is killed by another Skarabi who heard Mon's manipulative speech from the doorway and would rather kill her than listen to it again. Luckily for Mon, the base is attacked and Lando ends up being the one to rescue her. Mon is obviously thinking that Lando is going to kill her now that he has her at a disadvantage, and I love that Chewie shows up and actually thinks that he could do it, so he keeps his bowcaster trained on his former friend. Lando though just wants to be a rebel, and maybe helping Mon will get him some points towards making that happen. So Lando frees Mon from the prison and they return to the fleet to continue his trial. Issue 47, the final issue of the arc, picks up sometime later as a gonk droid of all things almost kills Lando by flooding his cell with its poison waste gas. Luckily, Sally's droid Paralegal 3L was close by and destroys the gonk and helps Lando out, but doing so makes it look like the droid is actually freeing Lando from his cell. Sally arrives to alleviate any doubts, noting that the guards weren't actually doing their jobs, and heavily implies that maybe General Maydean might be the one behind this. And I would actually buy that, since he's been after Lando for the entirety of this arc, and wanting him dead just to be rid of the smuggler would fit in with his MO, since the trial isn't going their way. The trial continues though, and Akbar claims the malfunctioning gonk droid was part of the recent Scourge attacks, and I don't know if it was intentional, but Madabak Musabekov, the artist for the series, draws Akbar with just this really utterly suspicious look on his face. He's got really narrow eyes, and he looks like he's looking around, and it makes it look like he's just making all of this up and is actually suspicious himself, like he knows what's happened and just doesn't really want to let on, and it's kind of hilarious. It looks really funny. I actually really like how Sol frames it all in a way that maybe some of the rebels outside of Luke, Leia and Chewie could have actually done this, and they would actually have good reason to. This man betrayed them and betrayed their trust, so I could definitely see reasonings as to why they would want him dead now. Sally continues to call her witnesses, her next being Lobot, who is quick to tell the council that Lando saved him from death by fixing his implants, giving him a chance to live again and even communicate. Lobot tells the court that Lando is loyal to the people around him, and his loyalty isn't given easy, but when he does give it, he will move the stars in service of that loyalty. Maydean really hates that the trial is not going his way, but Lobot is allowed to continue his statement of Lando's loyalty and how it has a hierarchy, which is an interesting way to look at his loyalty, being that he's loyal to someone above something else. In this case, Lando was loyal to his friend Lobot over his loyalty to the rebellion. As the trial begins to close out, Lando has one final card to play, wanting to tell Leia something about Han. Now, I really liked this since Sol pays off a little part of the Dark Droids event when Lando snuck into Jabba's palace to find the talkie to help Lobot, and he saw Han on the wall, and he gives Leia this information, telling her that he knows exactly where Han is, how to get into the palace through secret entrances, and he'll give up all of that information if the rebels let Lobot go and not punish Lobot for his mistakes. Leia, of course, agrees to the deal as Lando takes the witness stand, and instead of listening to Sally and going about, everything in the way they had planned, Lando gives a great speech that lays it all out, calling everyone their criminals, and really they are, as the Empire would execute them all on sight, and they all break the law just by being there. So what he did isn't any different than what they are doing right now. They are all criminals and all guilty of it. I really like the zero fucks given Lando, and it's a far cry from the character who Sol started with, someone who was just so caught up in himself and the image he presents to everyone. But now Lando doesn't care that he's a rebel, he actually loves being a rebel. That classic scoundrel charm does come through though, as he hopes that at least they remember him, since they are very lucky to have known him in the first place, so I like that there's still that little bit of charm there. The trial continues to close after Sally follows up Lando's speech with her own about how the trial was a farce and Lando is the genuine article and actually believes in the cause. Sol is sure to throw in a sly line about Lando being made a general, which by the time Return of the Jedi comes around he actually is, so I hope we actually get to see the maneuver he pulled on the Battle of Tanab that allowed him to become a general, since that's something we actually haven't seen in canon yet. Mon and the others continue to make their judgment and eventually find Lando guilty on all charges, of course, but his sentence isn't to be killed or imprisoned, it's merely to pay a rather hefty fine of 250 million credits to the rebels. This is actually a really funny sentence, since Lando just worked hard to get himself out of debt with Jabba by selling the talkie to him, but he's essentially traded one debt for another, something that we see all the time with smugglers like him and Han. The added caveat though is that he can work off the debt by being a good little rebel and volunteering for suicide missions and the like, so he has a chance to get out of the debt if he is good. With the trial over, Sally gets ready to leave, and my suspicions about her are made a little bit more clear, as it's heavily implied that she was the one who hired the Skarabi mercenaries to kidnap Mon Mothma, as well as planned out the assassin gong, with the hope it will make Lando look a little bit better off and a little bit more like the genuine article. The plan did work though, and now Lando is indispensable to the rebellion, but Sally though is actually impressed with Lando's growth as a character, as she's known him for quite some time and could tell that he actually believed in the speech he gave and actually sees himself as a rebel now. With a goodbye kiss, Sally takes her leave and the issue and story arc comes to a close. The trial of Lando Calrissian was a very fun, fulfilling arc that closed out Charles Soule's long-running focus on Lando. I've adored Soule's development of Lando from charming scoundrel to die-hard rebel, giving the character who was first introduced as a stand-in for Han Solo some individuality and identity that separated him from Han greatly. I can't wait to see what he does for his final 3 issues of the Star Wars run he's been writing, since it's going to be a tough act to follow this story arc. I am going to give this story arc a 9 out of 10.